see that these revolutions share a basic structure that I hope will help us understand the current social justice or woke revolution that we're currently experiencing, right? If you wonder why we study this history, just remember the old saying, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. As I looked at these different revolutionary moments, I see a pattern. Each of them begins by rejecting religion or God or absolute truth, absolute values, and then they redefine the problem and provide an alternative myth. And that new myth gives a secular version of the origin of human nature and the origin of evil, the original sin, if you will. And then it provides a myth to address that and a utopian vision. And then sadly, it turns out not everybody's on board. And so when they confront opposition, these people are redefined as enemies and eliminated. Actually, the modern era begins with Descartes and the cogito. Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Why are we studying these old dead white guys, right? Why is it so revolutionary? Until Descartes, the Western world lived with God in his heaven, and God was the subject of the universe, and we were in the object position, his creation. Our task was to live in harmony with God's laws. But so prior to the Cartesian cogito, the medieval world was based on two pillars. One was the great chain of being, and maybe you've not heard of this before, but it was the medieval cosmology. The earth was at the center of the universe, and God was in his heavens, and there was a place for everyone in the world. And the second truth, was the divine right of kings, and the king was anointed by God and ruled on his behalf. And that was the world that Descartes grew up. We're not here to suggest that we should just go back and that world doesn't exist anymore. And look, the earth wasn't the center of the universe, and under Louis XVI, France was in debt and falling apart. And yes, there was corruption in the church, although there were many good priests. The medieval worldview, and this is the reason we're talking about Descartes, it was completely turned upside down by this philosophical statement. It said that the subject of knowledge, the guarantor of truth, was none other than the thinking person, the thinking thing, literally. And he said, but I can doubt everything, but I can't doubt that I'm the one doing the thinking. And that literally shifted not only philosophy, but the entire world. The order of dominion was reversed. The existence of God and every other truth then depended on man, on human understanding, and not the other way around, right? So human reason became the new order of the day. The task then was to design a world based on human reason, the rationalist revolution. And this is the history of what happened, right? So they began to redefine God, in France in particular, right? That Descartes was, of course, French. And the order that was developing was based on this new rationalist thought, and especially the ideas of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Rousseau was not an atheist, but his supreme being was a deist. That is, it was the idea that the creator basically could be known through reason. It rejected the God of the Abrahamic tradition. It's significant because if God is reason, and reason is God, it changes our understanding of what it means to be a human being and what the origin of evil is. Right? During the revolution, the more radical revolutionaries, I wish this, I have to change this slide because the sign of the Festival of Reason covers up what is this wonderful old depiction of this celebration that took, and it was a celebration for the goddess of reason. This is literally what happened during the French Revolution. And behind that, you can see that there's a goddess, an idol, if you will, of the goddess of reason on a chair that they're parading around town, right, around Paris. So this was the extent to which they took this notion of reason, right? They created this festival. It was very popular, by the way, and it was, of course, designed to replace the rites of the old Catholic Church there. By rejecting traditional religion, then what Rousseau does is he creates his own origin story, what it means to be a human being. And I don't know if you've heard this term before, but actually it's not one he used, but it was used about his ideas. that human beings are like a noble savage, right? They were originally uncorrupted, good, if you will, in what's called the state of nature. They were innately good in their natural state. And this is where the idea of the noble savage comes from. But civilization had created laws for social organization which separated human beings from their natural, original, primitive goodness. Having redefined what it means to be human, then Rousseau redefined the problem of evil. Evil is not a spiritual or religious question for him, it's a social problem. And of course, it is a social issue for all of us. The problem of evil lay not inside us in the human heart, in our own personal individual struggle with right and wrong, but it was the pursuit of one's individual interest that put the individual at odds with the rest of the community. And this is expressed in his social contract. He says, man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. So what is the cause of that slavery? For Rousseau, the original sin, the founding myth, was that private property that separated man from his original goodness. It's the pursuit of the own individual will, my own individual interest. And it led some people to accumulate more than others, right? It separated people, in his view. And it served to separate the noble savage from the communal spirit, right? Its natural state of goodness. Rousseau is actually responding to Hobbes, who had a very different view. His view, as is stated in the side, life in this state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, right? But what Rousseau says is that this is actually what civilization did to man. Man was originally good, but he's just reading back into the so-called state of nature, which of course itself is a myth, right? We don't know, right? This was their philosophy, their theory. I just want to point out that, of course, between Rousseau's innately good human beings and human nature and Hobbes's human nature, there is a traditional view that we are pulled between the spirit and the flesh, between the mind and the body, between the better angels of our nature and the little devil that sits on our shoulder sometimes. So Rousseau's philosophy rejected all this traditional view and redefined the problem of corruption as private property. And so civilization, the system of laws and society that's built around that. So again, it's a social problem, not a moral one. So based on the new mythology, Rousseau sought to create a new utopian vision. For Rousseau, there was no way back to the old, original, pure, innocent, happy state. But it was possible to change society, to change civilization and the social order so that human beings, human nature could be perfected. The approach is one that would be adopted, frankly, by all the subsequent attempts to create utopia on Earth here that happened during the period of the Enlightenment and even until today. It's not people, but society that must be reformed so that people can be good. And why are we studying this French Revolution? Because this is a pattern that exists with all these utopian philosophies, right? Society's the problem. Human beings will be good as long as we remake society, right? But in order for that to happen, Rousseau argued for what he called the general will as necessary, right? How do you actually recreate society? How do you reform it? Since the individual had been corrupted by the pursuit of selfish interest, which he defined as private property, there would have to be some common cause, what he called a general will, which he said was what's basically in the best interest of everyone, the best interest of society. And this would be the new basis, the new reason, which would replace the old superstition of the church's philosophy and the old political order. That is basically Rousseau's philosophy. And the question then, of course, is what is the general will? How will we know what it is? Rousseau doesn't actually say. Somehow we'll all know it when we see it. But again, these are the ideas behind the Rationalist revolution. Right?